So, guys, before we finish our story on metabolism, the all important process of life, it will be nice if I say some few final words about this important process. You know, it is the metabolism because of which we are what we are. All the things we do is because of the energy we get from our food. And this process of getting the energy from our food, this is provided, this energy is provided by metabolism. When we are talking about metabolism, you have seen that we talked about the metabolism of carbohydrates, we talked about the metabolism of lipids, we talked about the metabolism of nucleic acids, we talked about the metabolism of amino acids or proteins. In all these, one or two things you have to keep in mind, most important of which is that this is not only story of certain chemical reactions giving rise to certain products because of the reaction occurring between certain reactants. There is an essence in these reactions. You have to take the overall, consider the overall picture of the whole metabolome, which is a part of, which, because of which the metabolism is such a grand theory or such a grand process. So, whenever we are talking about metabolism, whether it's metabolism of carbohydrates or lipids or protein or whatever, certain things you should always keep in mind. Of course, you should know that what are the reactants and what are the products. Of course, that's very important. But also, you should know that whether the reaction is reversible or irreversible. And you should also know why reaction have to be reversible or irreversible. For instance, when we are talking about glycolysis, you know that some of the reactions or most of the reactions of glycolysis are reversible, but there are certain reactions which are irreversible too. And these certain irreversible reactions are then bypassed by the process of or circumvented by the process of gluconeogenesis. So it's very important that you know that whether or not a reaction is reversible or irreversible, and you should also understand the basic reason that why a reaction have to be a reversible or irreversible. That's one thing. Also, you should also know that in which steps you get the energy or ATP or GTP, but you know most of the time it's because of the reason it's ATP, so we most of the time are focusing on ATP. That's why it is also known as the energy currency of the cell. You should also know that whether a reaction is energy giving reaction, energy yielding reaction, which most of the catabolic reactions are, or whether it needs energy, it's energy demanding. As I mean, most of the synthetic reactions, most of the reactions which involve the formation of compounds in our body, they demand energy for this formation of or synthesis of the compounds. You should also know stoichiometry, the quantitative in quantitative terms, that how much ATP molecules you get from. I mean, you don't have to be all the time know very exact numbering of the ATP, that how many ATP molecules you get, but at least you should have an idea that how much ATP you can get from a reaction. That will let you know about the spontaneity of the reaction. Also, very importantly, you should keep in mind that these reactions are occurring in our bodies, and hence they have to adapt themselves according to the environment, according to the demands of the body. That's why they have to be very tightly regulated. The regulation of metabolic pathways is as important as the occurrence of the metabolic pathways. And this is something we have been repeatedly coming across during our story of the metabolism. You should know which enzymes are involved in the metabolism of a specific, I mean, and the occurrence of a specific metabolic pathway, but you should also know that how these enzymes are regulated allosterically, by forward feedback, by negative feedback, and so on and so forth. Then finally, whether it's carbohydrate metabolism or whether it is nucleic acid metabolism, lipid metabolism, protein metabolism, you should have, you should see the metabolic pathways, you should see in a broader spectrum. Should not only be talking about, because you are studying or understanding glycolysis, this is all about glucose and conversion of the glucose into pyruvate. You have to see how in a bigger picture it is helping our body. For instance, if you see this picture here, this picture actually, this whole picture, this shows the whole, we can say we have shown you the whole story of metabolism in this one single picture. Keep in mind that at the center of metabolism in our body is the metabolism of the carbohydrates, specifically the metabolism of glucose. Glycolysis and Krebs cycle, they too are the central hub of the metabolism, because with these many other metabolic pathways are connected. With glycolysis, there is connection of the glycogen synthesis, there is connection of the pentose phosphate pathway, which ultimately leads to the formation of nucleotides. Then both Krebs cycle and glycolysis are linked with the fatty acid metabolism, cholesterol metabolism, and then also the amino acid metabolism. And you also know that these amino acids, when the final product of the metabolism of the amino acids is the nitrogenous compound ammonia, which has to be excreted, and for that excretion of the ammonia, you have the urea cycle. So in this way, whenever you are studying about the metabolism of any pathway, you have to somehow, I mean, you don't have to remember it, of course, but you have to have something in your mind that in bigger picture, how this metabolic pathway is connected with the other metabolic pathways. And this is something you should always keep in mind. I hope during our journey of whole this whole metabolic story of, or story of the metabolism of different macromolecules, you not only have learned about different metabolic pathways, but also how on a larger scale, in a broader scale, how life depends upon metabolism, how integral it is for the living systems to get energy from their food.